If you're visiting with us, you will be catching up with us a little bit. We are working through the book of Esther. We are into chapter 3 this morning, and we are spending some time enjoying this little tale. I don't say the word tale as if we think it is anything other than the inspired word of God, certainly the history of what took place amongst the Jewish people, but it is a story, and it has a challenge to it. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that, as I mentioned already, the name God is not mentioned in the book of Esther, which is part of its genius, that it is about how God works behind the scenes in subtle ways, and sometimes when he's not even mentioned and not even known, and yet he's at work. It's also the challenge of this book is the fact that there's very little teaching, very little doctrinal teaching in the book. It's a story. So one of the challenges that we have, one of the things that people often do with this book when they come to it, is they turn it into a morality tale. And they read a piece and then they'll say, and that's how you should not be. Or they'll read another bit and they'll say, and that's how you should behave. And we turn this into a tale of how we're supposed to live. That's not the intention of this book. That's the temptation we have when we come to narrative like this. But that is not the intention of the book. The intention of the book is for us to see God's hand in the midst of ordinary circumstances. When they had their backs against the wall, God was still there and God was still in it. Sometimes the struggle with morality tales is that they never empower us to do the thing that we're being told to do. Without the power of Christ in you, there's no point in telling you how to behave and how to live and how to rewrite and pull your socks up, because some of you will just think you can do that, when in fact we have no ability in ourselves to ever please God. We've met King Ahasuerus. We found out that he is the king of the Persian Empire. We saw that in chapter 1. We saw how he had a great feast and festivity for 6 months, and then 1 week of a celebration of who he was, and he had invited everybody to come and look at his stuff. He even thought that even though he was in control of everything, that he'd even invite his wife to come and celebrate, and he didn't control his wife. We found that King Ahasuerus was a big deal. Then we met Mordecai. We found that Mordecai was listed as a very Jewish Jew. We got his genealogy, and we saw that he was even son of Kish, related to the father of Saul. This man is in the line of royalty. He is an important Jewish figure, and yet he has this other side of him where he tells his daughter, so-called daughter Esther, the woman at least that he raised as daughter, to be quiet. Don't tell anybody you're a Jew. Keep your head down. Keep quiet. Let's just keep your nose clean. He's got that double side to him. What is going on? We met Esther. We found out that she is a young girl swept up into this Persian Empire, probably pulled from her home, probably not arrested, but at least abducted and brought into this harem. She is, by circumstance and time, actually the one who is chosen to be queen. Today, we are going to meet Haman. I don't know if you know of the Jewish celebration called Purim. Happens once a year. The book of Esther is read at that celebration, and every time the name Mordecai is read, as the book of Esther is read, the crowd will cheer. And every time the name Haman is read, the crowd boos and hisses. I'm not asking for that this morning, but just a bit of information that you know that this is the guy. If you don't know this book, he's the one who wears the black hat. And we are about to find out exactly how dark he is. Meet Haman. Well, you can't meet Haman without going back into chapter 2 just a little bit, because, and I mentioned this last week, that I was going to tell you these verses needed to come back to us again, and so here we are. This is how Haman is introduced to us. In chapter 2, verse 21, there's a little event that takes place. In those days, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to the Queen Esther, and Esther told it to the king in the name of Mordecai. And before you know it, these two men are discovered that their plot is true, that they had plans to smother him in his sleep with a pillowcase. I have no idea what their plans were. I just made that up. I thought it was a good ending. Found out that he is rescued, and in fact, he lives. And so we find out that something happens as a result. You would think, the normal person would think, Mordecai saved the king's life. Mordecai is a hero. What is the very first verse of the very next chapter immediately following this event? After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman. Wait, what? I thought it was Mordecai that saved the king's life. What did Haman do? What in the world did Haman do that he should be deserving of any kind of advancement? He promoted Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. What just happened? Something's not right here, people. And that is a literary device that is so often glossed over as we read this book. We don't know what Haman did. Why would he get this reward? And that is the point. We know what Mordecai did, and he got nothing. And Haman, who does nothing, gets rewarded. Something's not right. And this is the beginning of how we find out that this man Haman is a little bit off center, you might say. Now, we don't know altogether why this has happened, what has taken place that brought this to be, but we know immediately there's some measure of injustice, or seemingly to be some injustice. Now, I got to draw aside just for a moment and help you to understand who Haman is. We are given this information after these things King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite. That isn't just there as a word to make you confused and have to try and pronounce a difficult word. There's a reason that word is in there. What is an Agagite? Do you know this word at all? The only place it's used, 2 places in Scripture, and one is here. The other place, I have to take you back to the book of Exodus. If you'll bear with me, this is important that it actually becomes germane to the entire story, if you can believe it. Exodus chapter 17, verse 14, just a bit of history here. This is after the Exodus, meaning they have been brought out of Egypt. The people of Israel has been led out by Moses under God, and they have been set free. The Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a memorial in a book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." Well, that's interesting. Sounds a little harsh. I am going to take the people of Amalek, and I am going to make them disappear from the earth. Why is that? Because Amalek has the dubious honor of being the first people in the Bible who decide to attack and try to wipe out Israel. Deuteronomy 25, 17 and 18. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt. Now, what was taking place, if you remember the history, maybe you don't, but the people were literally walking, traveling. Some of the people were lagging behind. The stragglers, the tired, the toddlers, I don't know. But not everybody was keeping up with the pack. And so there were some people who were straggling behind, and Amalek, the people of Amalek, saw an opportunity to pounce on the stragglers, on the weak, on those who were not guarded by the great mass. And so they snuck up behind, and they attacked them from behind, and they started killing the Israelites. And this act of cowardice in trying to overtake them becomes the reason that God decides these people have got to go. Now, this is what the text says. Remember what they did to you on the way when you came out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary and cut off your tail, those who were lagging behind you, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget. It is underlined. It is written down. Amalek must go. Amalek becomes to us as New Testament believers, and I'm assuming you are this morning, a picture or a type of how we are to treat our own flesh. Amalek is our own flesh that seeks to linger, that wants to pounce, that's always looking for the upper hand, that's trying to take over. It is the enemy of our soul. It is the desires of our heart. We need to deal with our sin at its deepest core, and we don't play around with it. We don't fool with it. How do you deal with your sin? Do you flirt with it? Do you make friends with it? It must die. Don't play around, don't fool with it, don't make friends. It has to come to an end. This is the reason that we struggle with our flesh even now. Why do you keep on sinning? Can I tell you why? I know my own heart. The reason is you love your sin. You tell yourself you don't, but that's the reason for habitual sin. Whatever you're doing you're doing it because of something you're getting out of it that you continue to want. And until you're humble enough to admit, I keep gossiping because I want to know things that aren't my business, or whatever the reason are, until you're willing to be humble enough to confess your sin and put it to death, you'll always have that habit. It will always be there. You have to attack the enemy to the nth degree. This is your calling. This is who we are as God's people. We attack the sin in our lives. It's a battle. It's a battle. That's why this is pictured as a battle. And Amalek is that picture to us. It must be annihilated. Let me take you now to 1 Samuel 15. This is now, they have settled in the land, and they are now in a position that Saul is king, and they have been given the task of going and attacking Amalek and wiping them out. Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. Do you have any problem with anything I've read so far? They wipe out all of the Amalekites. He took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fattened calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction. The bad stuff they got rid of. They were to wipe out everything, and instead under Saul they decided to pick and choose. I like this, I'm going to keep that, and Agag lived. And now we're going to come into Esther 3, and we're going to find out that this dastardly man Haman is called Haman the Agagite. What does that mean? Well, some people have said that this is because Agag's family was spared, that in fact the line of these Amalekites continued to linger, that you get what you pay for. You don't do what you're told, and down the line it comes back and bites you. This is why we are told to deal with your sin, because you can't make a pet out of it, you can't befriend it, you can't handle it. It will always come back and trounce you. Always. That is why we are in a battle against our own flesh and continue to be. Haman the Agagite. Was this man a descendant of King Agag? Or some would say that this is just an expression that he is in the same line of all of those Amalekites whose desire it is to wipe out the Jewish race. Any way you want to slice that, that is why the word Agagite is there. It harkens you immediately back to the Amalekites, the king of the Amalekites, King Agag, and all that they were about, and they were trying to take out the Jews, exterminate them. Well, I don't know if you know this, but you have an enemy of your soul who's happy to take you down and take you out, and we are continually in a battle against that enemy. And like Haman the Agagite, sometimes we let things live. That is who Haman is. He is an enemy. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite. Verse 2. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. Now, some people would like to surmise here, and again, can I say for those of you who have read this book many times, that we often insert into this, I can just say politely, you are assuming, I would like to think, probably you are, that the reason he's not bowing down is the same reason that Daniel and his three friends didn't bow down to the statue. But can I say politely, that is not what the text says. There's nothing in the text that says bowing down to this man had anything whatsoever to do with worshiping him. Nothing. We know that is what's taking place in Daniel. All we know is he's to bow down in respect for this man's authority. This could be nothing more than you saluting your superior officer, you curtsying to the queen, you showing some respect to the mayor. It's not an act of worship. It's an act of respect for the position that he's in. And it was a requirement that King Ahasuerus put upon the people that this man Haman is to be respected in his position. But you remember the story. Haman received a reward for doing nothing. And Mordecai didn't get a reward for doing something. Maybe that's what's going on. Mordecai says, who do you think you are to be all of a sudden second in command? We don't know the subtext. We don't know what's going on. We don't understand the heart of the thing. All we know is Haman is causing them to have to be bowed down, and Mordecai is refusing. We are not given the reason for this disobedience. But there's a tension building. The king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, why do you transgress the king's command? When they spoke to him day after day, and he would not listen to them, they tattled. They told Haman in order to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. That's an interesting expression, isn't it? To see if he's going to get away with it. They taught him day after day. Do you not know what you're doing? Here's his excuse. He told them that he was a Jew. That's the first time that Mordecai has come out to express who he is and gives measure of understanding to his heritage. But needless to say, he is not bowing down. Verse 5, and when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage to him, Haman was filled with fury. Wow, that's a little over the top, don't you think? Calm yourself down, dude. So there's one guy who won't bow down to you. But no, now we're meeting Haman all over again. This is not only a man who's got a position who, for all intents and purposes, didn't do anything to deserve it, at least from the text. We also now, he's not only an Agagite, so he's in the line of people who wanted to eliminate all the Jews. We find out that this guy's got anger issues, and he is ready to do something serious. So verse 6, you know the drill. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone. No. Mordecai's like a bag of chips. One is not enough. I'm not just going to take Mordecai out. I disdain just to lay my hands on him. I just found out that this man is a Jew. So he made known to him the people of Mordecai. Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. This is exactly the situation that the Jewish people come into over and over again. Here they are in Egypt. What does King Pharaoh say? Throw all your babies in the sea. Make sure you kill them. Make sure there's no male babies. Make sure that this race will eventually die out. They disobey. All the way to King Herod in the New Testament. Make sure you kill all the babies. Kill all the babies because we need to kill that new king. What are they trying to do ultimately? What is going on? There is a maniacal scheme behind the scenes that none of us recognize. That there is a plot to make sure that God's promise is never fulfilled. To make sure that the Messiah never comes. There was a desire amongst the evil spirit known as Satan to ultimately wipe out the Jews for the purpose of making sure that God's promise for his people would never be fulfilled. Kill the Jews and guarantee we have no Messiah. I don't know if you know how important the Messiah is, people, but that struggle you have to overcome your own flesh, you will never overcome on your own except by the power of one who has defeated sin for you, by the power of one who was raised from the dead for you. And unless you apply that to your life, you will always struggle with sin and you will never know victory. We need the Messiah and the power of the Messiah. Verse 7, in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, which is not a car, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, or pure, some people pronounce it. That is, they cast lots. So, here's a word we don't often use. It's a Hebrew word, pur, P-U-R, and it is the single word for the word, plural word, dice. So in other words, they cast a die. Okay, that's what that word is. And that is, comma, they cast lots. The plural of pur is the word purim, purim. I-M endings in Hebrew is like an S ending in English. Okay, seraph or seraphim, plural, singular, singular, plural. The purim is lots. That's where the word comes from. And that is what they did and what he is doing. He is casting lots. Why is he casting lots? Because Haman now wants to have the authority, if you will, or the permission of the gods. This is divination. He's looking for some outside supernatural interference and to tell him what he should do, how he should do this. So he cast the lots day after day. They cast it month after month to the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. What does that mean? Cast the lots. Should it be on the 1st of the month? No. Should it be the 2nd of the month? No. Should it be the 3rd of the month? No. They did this over and over again. In our vocabulary, we'd say, should it be January? No. And they did this over and over until he came to a conclusion of what he thought he found. This is an artifact that is from, I believe, ancient Persia. One of these pur or dice, as we would call them, with cuneiform markings. What they mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody. This is the kind of thing that would be tossed, and this would be read, and as they come up, whatever side is facing, they put together the pieces of the puzzle, and they believe they're getting information from the spirits to tell them what to do. And while they come to this conclusion, they ultimately reach the date that it will be the 12th month and the 13th day that all of the people of Israel, the Jewish people, are going to be wiped out. The irony of all of this, of course, is while he goes to all this trouble of casting lots and finding out what day to put his plot into practice, we read elsewhere in Scripture, Proverbs 16:33, for example, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. That's an amazing statement. You ever play Monopoly? Please tell me you didn't play Monopoly. You don't play Monopoly. But anyways, do you ever have to throw dice? You know, it's your turn, and you think, that was random. Really? Do you know how organized our universe is in a God who oversees and governs all things? That the laws of physics dictate how you throw the dice and what you're doing with the dice, how they land. I mean, if you really think about it, there is no random. And this is what the text says. God already knows what the dice are going to say before they even say it. I've already decided what's going to happen. Why do you even play Monopoly? God knows who's going to win before you even start. What's the point of that? Just get the game out and go, okay, you win, and flip back. It's a much better way to play that game anyways. The lot is cast into the lap. It's every decision is from the Lord. And that's the fingerprints that we see throughout this book, that there's something behind the scenes. So clearly the writer wants us to see that this was done in a so-called random fashion. But in fact, it is gives exactly enough time for everything not to happen. Verse 8, Haman said to the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's law, so that it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. Well, that's well couched, isn't it? Part lie, part truth. Their laws are different. They don't keep the king's laws. That's not true. They do keep the king's laws. In fact, that's why Mordecai was working for the life of the king. Mordecai, who was in subservient position as Jewish people under the Persian Empire, he actually worked for the betterment of the kingdom, the same way that Canadians do. We don't agree with everything that our government is about, but we work for the betterment of our nation in spite of the fact that we are diametrically opposed to their ideological position. We work for the betterment, the same way he did. This is not true. He's not disobeying the king's laws, but what their laws are different. Boy, I read that and I can't help but wonder how long it's going to be until being different is illegal even in Canada. Maybe I'm paranoid, I don't think I am, but the way the laws are passed and what you're supposed to believe about morality, you better believe it. And if you don't believe it and get in line, how long will it be until your laws and your thinking is illegal. I don't know. You got to wonder. Tomorrow? Not sure. Could happen. It feels like it could happen any minute now. And this is what's going on. This is the pinch that these people have. And can you imagine that this man came along without ever saying who they are, has come up with this plan? If it please the king, let it be decreed that they be destroyed, annihilated, wiped out. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charge of the king's business, that they may put it into the king's treasuries. Haman's willing to foot the bill. If you remember, I told you this a couple weeks ago or last week, I'm not sure, but King Ahasuerus went and attempted to attack Greece and wipe out Greece, and he failed. This is known in history. And it cost him dearly, not only in men, but also in finances. And he came back to Persia to lick his wounds. And Haman now knows, smart man that he is, if he's going to get this done, the king is going to have to look at his coffers. And so Haman, true or not, comes out with this line, I will foot the bill. It's not even going to be on Persia. I will cover the cost. I want this to happen so badly. My hatred runs so deep that you won't even have to pay for this to happen. I'll take care of everything. So the king, think about this. The king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. You see how that's underlined and written again? Haman, the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. What did he do? He just took his ring off and said, here's the ring. Why did he give him the ring? The ring is the authority of the king. You write a law, you sign it in wax with the king's signet ring, and the king himself has written that law, even though it was by the hand of Haman. He now has the king's authority in his hand. What kind of a king is this that he hears there's some people, they're kind of not getting along, it's probably not in your best interest, you should probably just kill them all. Oh, okay. Here's my ring, go do your job. What kind of a king is this who has such disrespect for life? But this is the situation, and this is how dire it is for the Jewish people. Without the Jews, we have no Messiah. With no Messiah, we have no salvation. With no salvation, we have nothing. And the king said to Haman, the money is given to you, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to you. This is probably one of the longest verses in all of the Bible. I don't know that it is, but it's like one sentence. Take a breath. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an edict according to all that Haman commanded was written to the king's satraps, to the governors, and all over the provinces, and to all the officials of all the peoples, to every province in its own script, and every people in its own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet ring. The satraps, the governors over all the provinces, what would we say? That's the premier, the municipality, the mayor, I don't know. You just go down the chain. That's what it's doing. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with instruction to destroy, listen to this, listen to the way this is emphasized. This is such a Hebrewism, to make sure you get the point. To destroy, to kill, and to annihilate. Which one of those don't you understand? Which one do we need to add on top of the other one? All of them, young, annihilate, all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Maybe that's how Haman is going to get his 10,000 talents of silver, by plundering their goods. A copy of the document was issued as a decree in every province by proclamation to all the peoples to be ready for that day. The couriers went out hurriedly by order of the king, and the decree was issued in Susa, the citadel. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was thrown into confusion. That's another literary device for you. On the one hand, they're partying, on the other hand, they're completely confused. What is going on? And the clouds darken, and Haman has had his way, and he's made a law that cannot be repealed, that every Jew on the planet is going to be wiped out, and they are going to have the legal right to go march into your house and put everybody to death. Jeremiah 12:1. Righteous are you, O Lord, when I complain to you, yet I would plead my case before you. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all who are treacherous thrive? Why is evil allowed to get the upper hand? Why is evil allowed to trounce God's people? Well, can I tell you politely that part of the evil that you are battling, that's seeking to trounce you, is coming from you. It isn't always an outside source. It is your own flesh. It is your own lusts. It is your own greeds. It is your own hungers. It is your own desires. It is your own unwillingness to put Agag to death. And unless you take battle against your own flesh, evil will always have the upper hand. Haman, the Agagite, he lived. And to this day, the Jewish people are now threatened. And so it is with the enemy of our soul. If we don't deal with our own sin and seek to put it to death, we will come under fire, and we could be ultimately overrun. Verse 22, verse 23. This is encouraging words to us. Men of Israel, this is a sermon on the book of Acts. Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know, this Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. To say to this verse, and I'm trying to wrap up, and you're getting glassy-eyed and we've got stuff to do. Let me try to say this. Evil happened to Christ on the cross. There's no question about it. An innocent man was crucified, but God used it for good. And God used that evil for the ultimate accomplishment of bringing salvation to all people. Anybody who would listen, anybody who recognizes that they have an issue with their own sinful heart, anybody who needs victory over sin and death, that victory has been paid for through the wickedness and lawlessness of wicked men. God used their evil for ultimate good. To that end, God continues to use the evil of Haman to ultimately bring about good. And you know the end of the story. In fact, the Jewish people live. That is why we still celebrate Christmas, because there is a Messiah. And there is one who has given us victory over our flesh, who has given us victory over sin, who's given us victory over death. And can I just say, if you can listen to me at all, this is not just some nice fluffy talk. This is not some nice religious thing that we believe. I'm trying to get you to understand this. I'm talking about reality, okay? Reality. The sin that you battle with in your life, assuming that you're admitting that you battle with sin, there is victory for that sin. Stop making excuses that it's the way you were born, the way you were raised, that you can't help it. Stop making excuses. Stop believing that there's no way out for you, that you're caught so deep and so in such a web of your own pride. Put it to death. It starts with your humble heart that is willing to literally and ultimately raise the knife into the heart of your own sin. Do you know why you ask for forgiveness and you still feel yourself caught in the sin? Because you didn't put it to death. Try again. God, give me the strength. Show me what part of my pride that this has a hold of. There's some aspect of my life that I continue to let this sin live. Hunt it down. Kill it. Because if you don't, the Agagite will always get the upper hand. And the victory over that sin has been given to us at the cross. Can I just say again, this is not just religious talk. I'm trying to tell you this, people. It's a reality that you can know. It's a victory that is real. It is a revival that is genuine to the heart that is humble enough to come to God and genuinely confess your sin and put it to death and find that the Spirit of Christ himself comes in and gives you the ability to do the thing you could never do on your own. That's why this is not a morality tale. Because I can tell you all the good things you should do, and at the end of the day, you can't do them unless Christ himself empowers you as you put your sin to death. Haman is the enemy of the Jews. There is an enemy of your soul, and you must hunt it down, and you must kill it.